Hey everybody, it's Ayla, Wife with a Purpose here, and I needed to just make a quick video this morning in regards to a blog post that I spent half the night writing last night. I stayed up really late writing this. It's very dear to my heart. It's something I've been wanting to write, honestly, for about a year now, but I wanted to be able to do it right and do it at the right time and for the right reasons. And so I'm going to walk you guys through that blog. Basically, I'm just going to read that blog to you now. And that's that. I might do a little clarification or something if you've got some questions in the comments. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead over here to the screen share function. Okay, go over to my blog. If you're not aware, I do have a website, wifewithapurpose.com. And today I'm talking about why I'm leaving the label alt-right behind. But, oh, just one second. I need to check. I just realized that before I started this, I didn't check my microphone. I don't think I'm using my regular microphone. Hold on just one second here. Oh, yeah, it's way up there. It's plugged in, but it's just not down here next to my mouth. Okay, sorry. I don't know if the introduction there was funny because my microphone was out of place. Just 1 second here. So I can see comments. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So why I'm leaving the label alt-right behind. A few years ago, I was just a paleoconservative, libertarian-leaning anti-feminist who was concerned with the direction of the social justice with the direction the social justice warriors were going in regards to the deliberate destruction of both white culture as well as white people themselves, both in Europe and the rest of Western civilization. So when I stumbled across the alt-right, quote unquote, first under the public figures of Christians like Vox Day and Paul Ramsey, I was naturally inclined to pick up the label. It never much bothered me that atheists or pagans were involved in the movement because, as a former pagan myself, I was used to interacting cheerfully with a variety of beliefs, and I figured that if we all had the same end goals, I could work with these figures, and for the most part, I still think that is true. However, since both Vox Day and Paul Ramsey dropped the label of alt-right and or dropped their involvement in the cause, I've been pondering the label. Certainly, all the lies about what happened in Charlottesville, excuse me, didn't help. And even though an independent report showed that the violence that day did not come from the alt-right, the stigma, which was entirely fabricated by the media, stuck around. I tend to dig my heels in and not let others define me. However, in the past 9 months since Charlottesville, I've been careful not to directly identify as alt-right, since the term seemed to be in great flux. Instead, I continue to identify first and foremost as a Christian, as I have for these many years. Well, I have a typo there. Many years. And summed up my politics as dissident right or identitarian. Both labels I'm still fairly comfortable with at present. I was not alone in this, as many people who had been self-labeling as alt-right or who had been labeled as alt-right drew away from this label in the wake of society's refusal to allow us to define who we were, but instead simply paint us all with the broad brush of Nazi. Whatever we wanted to call our movement didn't really matter to me anyway. We all sought the same thing: self-determination for white people in white lands, the right to preserve our people and our culture from the attacks, both mentally, spiritually, and physically, coming from the radical left and global elite. I still seek those things. However, there has been a few radical breakdowns in both the character and the conduct of major players in the movement. First, Matthew Heimbach, someone known for being on the socialist and more redneck side of the movement, reportedly cheated on his wife, with whom he has 2 small children, and then physically assaulted her when she confronted him over it, even choking her in front of their children. To say I don't want to be associated with that is an understatement. That sort of behavior does not represent my values and frankly makes me very angry. His dear wife has my undying support, but frankly, Matthew needs to get himself right with God and the heck out of politics. Second, as Easter approached this year, I began seeing the same tired Easter is a pagan celebration meme being tossed at me from people within our movement. Now, it's one thing to believe that, which I do not, but it's quite another to come on my Gab account and start harassing me, declaring my God to be fake when I'm simply posting about some Easter dinner recipes. And as a little aside, that's basically what happened a few days ago when I made that response video about Easter not coming from pagan traditions. I had started a subject, a hashtag over on Gab called Trad Easter, and I was literally posting my Easter dinner recipes when I got attacked by pagans. Even still, I was happy to go on my way. I made a response video so people knew where I stood and where the facts stood on the issue and stopped responding to attacks. I didn't associate my attackers with the alt-right specifically until today when I saw this tweet from Spencer. Richard Spencer, The Celebration of Ostara, Informative Essay on the Pagan Origins of Easter. So the supposed atheist quote-unquote leader of the alt-right, Richard Spencer, published this article on his website, altright.com, claiming that Easter is pagan. And I just have to ask why. Why would he do that? If he's an atheist, why would he care? He has no dog in this fight. Second, he is well aware that the alt-right movement contains many Christians. Why would he countersignal them like this and side with pagans, especially over a myth that Easter is pagan? A myth so ridiculous that even Huffington Post knows better than to make that claim anymore. Now, I'm not saying you can't be pagan or that you can't celebrate spring equinox. I'm simply saying that isn't where Easter comes from. But okay, no matter where you stand, Christian, pagan, atheist, or other, why is anyone going around starting trouble and being divisive within the movement? Frankly, I'm tired of the alt-righters, quote unquote, constantly telling me I worship a Jew on a stick, quote unquote. And I was happy to ignore them as outliers until I see this divisive article on altright.com, which also happens to make us look intellectually defunct. So I'm left wondering, why would I continue to endure personal attacks and death threats to defend and reclaim this label? It's dead. It's gone. As I said in the beginning of the article, I still hold all the same beliefs I held years ago when I stumbled across the alt-right, but the term itself has changed or shrunk down such that I find myself outside of it now. It no longer reflects Vox Day's 16 points of the alt-right, It no longer reflects Vox Day's 16 points of the alternative right, and now openly attacks my faith from the highest levels up. The term alt-right is not really needed to describe my beliefs anyway. Plain old Christian works just fine. God created the world, the races, the nations. Defending all of them and preserving all of them in their homelands means being a good steward of God's creation, Genesis 10:32. God expects us to defend our borders, Ezekiel 22:30. God commands us to honor our parents and where we come from. To abandon our people is to abandon the ancestry, heritage, and lineage that God gave us, Exodus 20:12. We are commanded to have families, to have many children, to raise them in the faith, to protect and defend their people, Psalm 127:3-5. We're commanded to protect and cherish our women and keep them safe. Hence, we cannot allow people and cultures into our country which harm and mistreat our women, Ephesians 5:28. We are commanded to love and protect our family and serve them first, 1 Timothy 5:8. We're commanded to love our neighbor, which does not mean the whole world at once, but our literal neighbor whom we share a nation and culture with, Matthew 22:36-39. The Bible speaks against false notions of equality in earthly ability, while it speaks to the equality in the worth of souls. Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich rules over the poor." In fact, inequality is such a built-in part of God's creation that we are commanded not to covet the things other people have. It's one of the 10 commandments, Exodus 20:7. So in short, I'm happy to work with a variety of people who have common interests and goals, and I have no desire to fight with anyone trying to secure a future for our people. Outside of promoting healthy women's roles, I don't think women have a place in politics anyway. So I will personally no longer be using the alt-right label while still retaining all of the same beliefs I've advocated the past few years, that of traditionalism, sovereignty, and faith. God bless. Okay, so go ahead and stop the screen share there. And then what I'm going to do is just hop on over to the chat and see if there's any quick questions. I just wanted this to be a quick little video about labels. And okay, so let me just look at the chat really quick. Gerald said, glad to see more people dropping the alt-right label. White nationalism is the path, not civic nationalism. And I agree. I'm an ethno-nationalist, and I'm an ethno-nationalist for all ethnicities and all people. So I think that Africans have a right to Africa and self-determination there. I think that Chinese people have a right and self-determination to China. And I believe that white or ethnically European people have a right to self-determination within their lands as well. Samantha says, personally, I've always identified myself as a classical conservative, but it doesn't matter. We're all labeled alt-right anyways. Yes, and that's an important point. I want to be clear on this. I understand that the media and, you know, our detractors are not going to suddenly stop calling me or anyone else alt-right. Ramsey Paul, as I mentioned in the article, came out as not being alt-right more than a year ago. You know, if you look him up, Google his name today, it's still, you know, they call him the smiling Nazi. He's called, you know, a leader of the alt-right, etc. This is just for clarification, I think, that I needed to make personally and publicly, just to let everybody know where I stood and why frankly, I'm not using the label anymore. Because as I said, I haven't been using it since last summer. Heimbach isn't a major player. Those Hollywood I think you mean clouds, are presented by the SPLC. Perhaps that's true, but I do know that Heimbach is definitely much associated with the alt-right and is seen by many people as a leading figure in the movement, including myself. And while I never agreed with National Socialism, so I never, you know, joined the Trad Workers Party, and I've never actually communicated with Heimbach himself, though I am friendly with his wife. I never joined up with them or anything like that, but I didn't specifically counter signal them. I had no reason to, and I still have no reason to counter signal anyone within the Trad Workers Party. I think that most of those guys, their hearts are in the right place. We probably agree on a lot of issues. I'm not a socialist of any kind, though, so that's where I differ. I'm a little bit more like Jared Howell. If you watch the debate between Matt Heimbach and Jared Howell lately, I'm more of the libertarian leaning side of that. So I'm not into the National Socialism, but I do think that that Heimbach is just obviously not good for the movement, regardless of where he comes from or if he's a FBI plant or any of these conspiracy theories, which I don't necessarily subscribe to. The alt-right ideology is not strong enough to defend the ethnic European people. Lacey says, I'm confused. I support you, of course, always, but the alt-right is not even clearly defined. No economic model, no form of government. It's basically identitarianism, bottom line. I agree with you, Lacey. Oh my gosh. Lacey, sorry. Lacey Lynn. I completely agree with you. It's a catch-all basket that kind of just collected a bunch of us during the Trump campaign is really what ended up happening over the past couple of years. Like I said, people who are like Traditionalist Workers Party, who are more like National Socialists, all the way over to people that are like Cantwell, who was, he's a closed borders libertarian, to people who are just, kind of a little bit further right of Dennis Prager, the paleo conservatives, the anti-feminists, people like Milo, even though he never identified as alt-right, kind of got swept up in that label as well. And so there is a big problem with it as a label, because again, like I said, it never has been clearly defined. Vox Day attempted to define it. And this is why I originally adopted the label, because Vox Day, and I have the link to that definition on my website. Vox Day did clearly define the alt-right. He set this forth a couple years ago, 2015. I can't remember the date on that blog post, but it's been quite a few years. And he set forth 16 points. Here are the 16 points of the alt-right. This is what it means to be alt-right. But that never caught on. And then especially after his tiff with Gab, he kind of stepped aside and isn't really super active in the movement per se anymore. He still has a very active blog. I encourage people to check it out. It's very informative, but he's got his own other stuff going on, but he's not really active in what we would call the alt-right anymore. And so that is where I started to become a little well, I mean, I started to become concerned, honestly, when Paul Ramsey dropped the label. Ramsey Paul, if you guys are familiar with his YouTube, dropped the label. And I thought, oh, okay, I hope he's just being premature. And like I said in the article I just was reading to you, I really dug my heels in and I said, no, I don't want other people to define me. I don't want other people to define what the alt-right is. I want to define it as it is defined by Vox Day. He was really the first person to sit down. Now, he didn't coin the term. Obviously, we all know that. But he was really the first person to kind of sit down and hammer out these points. And that's what I identified with. Okay, let's see. Okay, so a brunette girl says, the alt-right doesn't have a leader and no formal manifesto. Let's give it some time. Well, the problem is that the alt-right as a term is about a decade old at this point. And like I said, it did have a manifesto through Vox Day at one point. And regardless of your feelings about him and his actions or his personal beliefs, somebody did sit down and hammer out these details, and it never really caught on. And the problem is that a lot of the leadership in the alt-right, Spencer included, and now I love him and I love what he's doing for our people, and I think that his heart is in the right place, and I'm not counter-signaling him at all, but I think that he doesn't even quite have it hammered out what the alt-right is. And his, he is a little bit it's in flux, even when you hear it coming from him. And so I understand, I've been waiting. Like I said, I got a little bit worried when Paul Ramsey left the movement, which was about a year and a half ago. Maybe it was even, I think we're coming up on 2 years in this fall, if I believe correctly. I think it was 2 years ago, this October, that Paul Ramsey left the movement. And we're coming up on about, not quite a year since Vox Day has been really disassociated with it as well. And so, like I said, I've been sitting on this for about a year as far as labels go and using labels. And I've been really cautious, particularly the past 9 months, not to use the label for myself in particular. For that reason, I feel, and I totally understand people that want to give it some more time, but I think that as soon as Hillary Clinton mentioned it and the media picked up on it and the media defined it and we didn't push back hard enough, honestly, and I understand that a lot of people can't push back hard because they're, they don't want to get doxxed, they don't want to lose their job, etc. And I understand that, and everybody has to make personal decisions. But when the media decided to define us, particularly after Charlottesville, we did not see a massive rising up of people in the alt-right really pushing back against the label. And in fact, we had a lot of people that decided just to troll around with it and continue to LARP as Nazis. And the problem with that is that those people who like to make Nazi jokes online don't have their real identities out there for the most part. 99.9% of them have some kind of, anonymous anime avatar. I have my real name on this movement. My husband's real name is attached to this movement. Our children are attached to this movement. And so when they go around making Nazi jokes online, that comes back on me in a very real way, in a very real day-to-day in my life way. And it's not fair, to be quite frank. It's not fair. Now, I don't want to be a total optics cuck, but there are optics here that we need to consider. And as much as I like a good joke and I like to trigger the left as much as anyone, it doesn't do any service to those of us who have our real name out there. And not all of us are Spencers. We're not all really quite popular and drawing in a lot of support and cash. I mean, I'm drawing in nothing, basically. I mean, I get a little bit to keep me limping by on this channel, but none of the people like me who have our real names out there associated with this movement, including very high up people, I won't mention names, but even a lot of the women in this movement that are, called trad thoughts and all of this, they're not making money off of this. They absolutely are not. They're going into debt or they're barely scraping by and eating top ramen. I mean, this is not something that we're able to support ourselves or our families with. And part of the problem with that is that it gets very hard to work a normal job and do this activism when we have Nazi LARPers in the movement who are encouraging the media defining us as Nazis and nothing but Nazis. Okay, so that little rant over. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of scroll through these really quick. Somebody says, don't pay attention to Spencer. Well, the problem is that whether or not you agree with Spencer, whether or not you like Spencer, whether or not you consider him the alt-right leader or not, the media does. The overall image is that he is the leader. He was there at the birth of the term. He does own the website. It is his. I mean, whether or not you like it or not, whether or not you came in through the movement through Spencer, I personally did not. I did not come in to the movement through Spencer. I came in again through mostly Vox Day and Paul Ramsey, and then after that, Red Ice Radio, which is now Red Ice TV. I did not come into this movement through Spencer, although I associated with him very early on. I was on his Radix live show that he did on Thursdays a couple years back. Just to discuss issues with him. And then, of course, I was invited by him to speak at Charlottesville. Okay, I got to get back to my family real quick. But Lacey says, you make great points. I'll be praying for you. I know you've been through a lot. Me personally, I see no problem with the label as it's basically identitarianism. And I agree, Lacey. It is basically identitarianism. I just, as I said, there's... And like I said, I still consider myself an identitarian. Let's see. Oh, Lacey says, I identify as traditionally conservative waspy who believes in ethno-nationalism for all people. Using I identify makes me cringe, though. Well, I agree. And of course, Lacey, as you know, I think that 99.9% of our beliefs would overlap there. I just, like I said, I've been sitting on this for about a year, a little bit more than a year, actually, but sitting on it and really pondering this hard for about 9 months. And just decided, I didn't know if I wanted to actually make an official announcement or not, but I just felt, especially after Spencer has kind of decided to dive into the religious debate, that I needed to go ahead and say, look, okay, this is not my label anymore. This is not how I would define myself, because these are not the issues that are important to me in this movement. This is not what I'm signing on to be talking about in this movement. Again, yeah, I'm a traditionalist. So when I'm posting, again, Easter dinner recipes on a trad Easter tag on Gab, the last thing I want to do is get drawn into this, pagan Easter back and forth. It's ridiculous and unnecessary. And so I think that distancing myself from that label as well frees me to not feel like I have to respond to that either. I don't feel like I have to say, constantly defend myself against what's coming out from the alt-right. Like, so if altright.com decides to post a thing about pagan, like Easter being pagan, I don't then need to clarify my stance on it or distance myself from it or say that I disagree and this is why, because I'm just saying, hey, I don't have a dog in that fight anymore. It's not my label. You guys talk about what you want to talk about. That's fine. And I'm happy, again, I'm happy to still work with and be friends with everyone and anyone who uses the alt-right label. I'm just saying personally, I don't want to feel like I have to constantly defend my belief system in particular. I don't want to have to constantly defend Christianity against people who are either alt-right or calling themselves alt-right, who are making these constant attacks. So, okay. Oh, thank you, a brunette girl, $10. I appreciate that. Love you, wife with a purpose. Let's support the channels who support our people. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I've said before, yeah, cancel your cable bill, sit down, think about the content creators that you like on YouTube, Red Ice, James Alsup, whoever you like to watch, and sit down and, give them $2 each a month or whatever, and divide up that bill that you were spending on cable TV or whatever, and give it to content creators that you appreciate. And that's really how we're going to change things, is we have to put our dollars where our values are. Okay. Well, there's like a lot of comments and I can't stay up very much on this chat for longer. So I'm just going to scroll through really quick and answer maybe a few. If I don't see your comment, I really apologize. I'm trying to address the ones that are jumping out here at me. Okay. Lacey says, I'm keeping the label because I see no problem with it right now, but people in the chat who think Ayla is cucking, trying to go through death threats, doxing, having children to protect, support her. Yeah, and it's not really because of the death threats or the doxing or anything like that I'm dropping the label. I simply am saying that when altright.com is publishing anti-Christian literature, I can't associate it with that. I can't associate it with that label anymore. Whether or not altright.com has the intellectual property rights to the alt-right, whether you think that morally they get to define the alt-right or not, no, that doesn't matter. The reality is that they, oh my gosh, my phone is like going crazy, maybe because of the live stream. Let me try to turn it down. Maybe because of what, it doesn't matter what your feelings are, but when people see the alt-right and they go to altright.com and they're anti-Christian, and it's fine. I don't care if they're neutral. And up until this point, they've been very neutral on Christianity for the most part over there, unless I missed something. But when they're actively coming out and being anti-Christian, then I can't keep that label on myself anymore. So that's me. It's not about cucking. I haven't changed any views or beliefs. And like I said, this isn't going to change how the media sees me. I will be alt-right until I die. They will put alt-right on my tombstone. Like I said, Ramsey, Paul, he left the movement. Like I said, I think it's been 2 years ago this October, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly. You Google his name right now, it's nothing but alt-right, alt-right, alt-right. I know that saying this is not going to remove any alt-right label from me in the media. Anyone left of Bernie Sanders is alt-right. Anyone right of Bernie Sanders is alt-right in their views. I am not doing this for anybody else. I'm doing this for myself, and I'm honestly doing this for my God. I'm standing up and I'm saying, God, look, they are attributing this label, altright.com, with these anti-Christian philosophies. And so I am standing up and I'm saying, no, that's not me. That's not what I believe. So I'm not holding on to this label anymore. This is not how I define myself. And again, that doesn't mean my beliefs have changed, because they have not. Everyone here get on Gab. Somebody said, agree. Most of the Nazi LARPers are probably feds and plants to discredit the alt-right. I also agree with that. But the reality is, reality is reality. It is what it is. Like, whether or not they're actually there or not, those of us, particularly myself, who have our real names attached to this movement, we have to say something when people are doing that. We have to morally and optics wise distance ourselves from things like that, because it's not fair. The jokes are fine, but playing World War II dress up is nuts. That's a good point. And again, I love jokes. And if you go back and you look at the left, even 10 years ago, they made Nazi jokes too. They've suddenly decided it's not okay for anybody, anytime, anywhere, to ever make a Nazi joke. And that doesn't mean that we have to adhere to their defining of the world. In fact, that's what we're pushing back against. We're pushing back against this trans nonsense and this whole you have to use people's pronouns and all of that. That's a huge part of what we're pushing back against. But the reality is, and so again, yeah, the jokes, okay, there's a lot of wiggle room there for jokes, but actually dressing up as a Nazi officer and coming to a protest and trying to say that you are in all sincerity like a World War II Nazi, that's just ridiculous. And it literally harms those of us who have our name associated with this movement. As we saw with Richard, it gets him punched on the street, and again, not that this is going to change anything in the way that the left perceives me. I'm not doing this for them. If I was doing this for them, then that would be cucking. I'm not doing this for them. I am clarifying for my friends and everybody else in the movement, and for myself and for my God. Where do I stand on this? The left never distances themselves from anything. Well, it's true and it's not true. The issue here is that within the dissident right, within the alternative right, within all of these things are a lot of different people with a lot of different philosophies. And as I said, So long as the alt-right was defined by Vox Day 16 points, or as long as the alt-right had leaders like Ramsey Paul, I was perfectly happy to accept the label. And it was a big grab bag. It is defining itself, which it should, because it cannot be a large grab bag forever. As it defines itself, it has shrunk such that it has left me outside. So here's how it defined before. I'm over here. It has shrunk down to being this. That's fine. And if you're still this, cool. I'm totally cool with you. I'm not counter signaling you. I'm not punching right. Nothing. Let's all be adults about this. This is the frustrating part of being in any movement. It's like, can you please take me at my word? Can you listen to what I'm saying and take my words at what I'm saying? I am not counter signaling Spencer. I am not counter signaling the alt-right. See, the alt-right has become something which is explicitly anti-Christian. So therefore, as a Christian woman, I do not want to use the label anymore. That does not mean that if you use the label, I'm upset with you. It doesn't mean that if you use the label, I think you're anti-Christian. Nothing like that. This is simply me saying the label is gone here and become this in the perception of the majority of people. Here's why that label doesn't fit me anymore. Okay. Oh, Marie says, I don't like that Spencer wants to create some sort of United States of Europe. That's delusional. No nationalists in Europe would agree to that. I actually agree. I don't like that he kind of likes the idea of the European Union if it wasn't globalist. Yeah, I'm not down with that. Spencer and I, politically speaking, we probably overlap less than 50%. Although that little bit that we do overlap and agree is an important part of it. And it's a very defining part of it, because I think where Spencer and I's ideologies would overlap is what sets both of us apart, politically speaking, and what draws us both fire, politically speaking. But again, as those of you who follow me for a while, after Charlottesville, I wrote an article about women in women's involvement in the movement at any rate. I don't want to be considered a leader of the alt-right. I've said that since the beginning. I am not a leader. I'm not a leader of any political movement whatsoever. I'm a woman, and I don't really believe that we should be involved in politics. I believe we are free to have political opinions, obviously, and we're free to voice them. But we are not leaders in politics. I don't think that we ought to be leaders in politics. I don't think that that's a woman's place. And my place, again, I'm advocating for traditionalism and ethnic European sovereignty. Okay. And so that is where my heart is. That is the labels in general that I associate with. And so I feel like, for better and worse, the alt-right is no longer defined in those terms. They're defined in terms that are too radically different from my belief set. And again, I am not counter signaling Spencer or the alt-right, or anyone who's in the alt-right, or anyone who still uses the label. And for those of you who want to dig your heels in and stick it out, God bless you. Yeah, and so they said, it doesn't matter how you label yourself the left, you're always a Nazi. I agree. That's what I said. This is not for the left. Let me make that clear over and over and over again. This is not for the left. I'm not doing this for them. Everyone left, or sorry, I said it again wrong. Everyone right of Bernie Sanders is a Nazi to them. I will never change that. They will put alt-right on my headstone. They will label me alt-right all day long. I am saying that I am being an adult about this. The adult reality is this is how the term is now defined. This is how I fit outside of that term now. So this is no longer a term I'll be using, even though my personal beliefs have stayed the same. And again, I have said from day one, I'm a big tent nationalist. I'm happy to work with a lot of people. I'm happy to work with pagans. I'm happy to work with atheists, agnostics, and Christians. I'm happy to work with National Socialists where our beliefs align, and I'm happy to work with libertarians where our beliefs align, and everything in between. And I am not leading a movement. I'm not counter-signaling a movement. I'm not defining a movement. I'm simply letting everyone know why this label in particular was one that I picked up years ago, why I used it, how I defined it for myself, again, using Vox Day's 16 points, and why it no longer has that same connotation. So therefore, I feel like I am not going to use that label anymore. Patty McKill, $9.99. I don't like Spencer's anti-Irish, anti-St. Patrick's Day article. In effect, Spencer is a WASP advocate, not a European one. Michael Jones' idea that identity is your religious ethnicity is correct. Patty McGill, I agree with you to a large extent, and I must have missed the St. Patrick's Day article. Perhaps I would have made this video earlier had I seen that. St. Patrick is incredibly dear to my heart in a way that I cannot even express in words. And I did not know that Spencer had an anti-Irish, anti-St. Patrick's Day article on altright.com. You know what? I keep up with altright.com using Facebook, and for the entire month of March, I was banned from Facebook. So that's probably why I missed it. I don't actually go over to the website very often. But I agree. I am an ethno-nationalist, but I've always said societies can tolerate a certain amount of diversity, up to about 10% or so, that I want white people to be an overwhelming majority in our nations, but I am not for kicking out non-white people necessarily. I definitely for deporting illegals. I'm definitely for closing our borders. I'm definitely for offering incentives for people to repatriate to their nations and their homelands, because I honestly believe that a lot of them would be happier there than living in a Western society where they feel like they're oppressed and ruled over. And so I think that if we were to have, I'm happy to share this country with a minority group, and particularly if they're Christian. And I think that should be the first thing that we're looking at a lot of times in terms of who we're interacting with. For me, that's going to create more homogeneity than strictly looking at race. Although that having been said, I am not counter-signaling pagans or atheists or agnostics, especially if they're pro-white sovereignty. Then I am happy to work with them. They're my brothers and sisters, and I love them. And I don't want to not work with them. So, okay, I've really got to go. Patty says, I must admit, I sometimes repost the Nazi stuff. I'm not a Nazi, but I'm from the Midwest. Yeah, and I repost the Nazi stuff too sometimes. I don't think I have in probably about 2 years, but when the jokes first started, they were hilarious. Some of these jokes coming out of the alt-right a couple years back, especially amongst the youth. And still, there's a couple of private Facebook groups that I'm on and things like that where they post Nazi jokes. And I think it's hilarious. And, I'm not counter-signaling people that necessarily that do that either. That's not, again, that's not where my issues are coming from on this. The Nazi jokes just trigger the heck out of the left in a way that is just hilarious to behold. And and again, 10 years ago, Nazi jokes were made by the left and the right all the time. Faulty Towers, and you go back and watch some of the more slapstick comedy stuff that was coming out of the 90s and the early aughts, the early 2000s, lots of Nazi jokes, and nobody said anything. It's a recent thing that the left has decided that any Nazi joke at any time, anywhere is inappropriate. Somebody says, I always thought Spencer's anti-Irish stuff was a joke. I always thought it was too when I heard him kind of mentioned, like a lot of people in the alt-right will like mention it like an anti-Slavic thing, or an anti-Russian thing, or an anti-Irish thing, and 99.9% of the time that's a joke, or anti-Italian, calling them like, so they take the word Nigger, which I can't say. I'm not the right race to say it, and I don't want to lose my streaming privileges, but they will take that and attach, potato in front of it, or spaghetti in front of it, and it's a joking banter amongst Europeans. And I think for the most part that is true, but like I said, I haven't read the St. Patrick's Day article. So if he got like more deliberate about it, that would be unfortunate. Just saying I'm a tradcon Christian waspy in ideology and Irish. I'm interested in reading the Spencer article. P.S. Support you, Ayla. Ethno-nationalism for all. Thank you, Lacey Lynn. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. You are so sweet. It's just the memes are funny sometimes. Okay. That's just banter. Let's see here. So Norwegian guy, I don't base my entire existence on my race like you do. Well, then you've not been paying actually any attention to what I've said, not only in this stream, but you're completely and entirely unfamiliar with my work. Just because I'm not ashamed to be white, and just because I think that every race has a right to their own ethnic sovereignty and their own homelands that they've created and built for their own posterity, does not mean I define myself entirely as white. And in fact, I have always, first and foremost, for the past 10 years, of the decade or more, defined myself as a Christian. And I have lots of non-white family and lots of non-white friends. But that doesn't matter to a lot of people, you know. Like I said, everyone right of Bernie Sanders is a Nazi to them, and we'll never change that. Okay, that's not what this is about. I'm not trying to change that. I don't think that they'll define me as anything different than alt-right for the rest of my life. I am just clarifying my point and myself. So I've really wanted to make this 10 minutes long. We're 40 minutes in. So sometimes I think maybe I shouldn't check the chat because then the chat, I could have just read the article and then been like, okay, done. But no, I think it's good that I checked the chat, because then we could clarify some things. And I know you guys had some questions, and I think that it's a good thing that we went over this. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I'm also probably going to try to do another live stream later today, because I have another exciting announcement, some thank yous to send out. So hopefully I will be able to do that if I can squeeze in the time. All right. I love you guys, and take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a trad day.